Welcome back to New Realities. I'm here again with my good friend and colleague, Sue Barnes. And Sue is a medium, if you haven't seen this program before. And we have some very, I guess, enlightening topics to talk about. So, Sue, you're going to be connecting with someone you call Gordon on the other side.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell, who is this guy, Gordon? Who is he?
Gordon was a spiritualist. He knows a lot about the philosophies. Spiritualism looked a lot at the soul and the different levels of consciousness that people needed to achieve to become mediums. So he has a lot of in depth information about spiritual issues.
Was he a master in his, did he achieve a sense of awakening in his life?
In his lifetime, he was considered to be a master teacher.
Okay. And then
And
how did you connect with him?
actually, the way I originally connected with him was in a trance session that we were doing on Zoom, and he came through with raps. This is interesting. We were on the trance session and we started hearing this like tap, tap, tap kind of noise. And of course, the first thing I do when I hear that is find out if there's an intelligence behind the raps. And there was, the answer was yes. And so we devised a system of yes and no kinds of questions, and we were able to determine that it was Gordon.
You were able to determine that's the name he calls himself. Of course, you really don't have names so much, right? I
Well,
mean,
actually, for him, I do, but I don't like to say it. I don't like
oh,
to say his full name.
you have another name for him, you're
Yeah, I
saying.
know who it is. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, is it someone famous?
Yes.
It
In
is. Some
in certain circles.
in what sense? You don't have to tell me who he is, but when did he live? What century?
Um, he probably passed away about 40 years ago.
Okay, like someone like Houdini or somebody. Anyway, it's okay.
Yeah, something. Yeah,
What?
someone like that. Yeah.
Okay, so today you're gonna bring in Gordon. We're gonna talk about the awakening of consciousness on a soul level, right?
Right.
All right, so let me just play. I know you, so just tell us your process before you go into that, okay? What do you
Yes,
do?
I just need to listen to a little bit of music so
Okay,
that I
I
can
got
bring my
some music.
consciousness down,
Yep.
um, and get it away from the waking consciousness that we're using right now. So I just need to get it down. And you can ask Gordon questions about the soul and about consciousness.
But first, you're gonna bring through a sort of dialogue, right? I mean, for transmission first, right?
We'll see what he has to say. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna start some music. Let me know if you like this. Let's see. Is this playing? Let me see if this is playing.
Good. Yeah. I like the flute music. The flute music has a kind of ancient quality to it.
Right. So you then go into a little altered state,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just gonna relax now. My dear friends, it is an honor and a privilege to be speaking before you today. Um, Wait a second.
Happen.
Out of trance for a second. I forgot the microphone.
Come out of trance.
Wait a second. I can go back in. I went in, so I can get back in. Oh, shoot. I
Okay.
just forgot this.
That's okay.
All
You
right.
sound fine. Okay. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go back in. You want me to play more music for you?
No, no.
Because you're already accessing that state of consciousness.
Yeah, because I was close to it.
All right. All right. All right. So I'll just give you a little more. Um,
My dear friends, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you today. For we bridge the world between the spirit and the earth plane. And we know that many of you are on your spiritual journeys and paths, and you would like some help and instruction on how to progress in a deeper and further state. We know that all people are part physical, part spiritual, and we try to connect to that spiritual essence that is within all of us. But sometimes that gets blocked by different things that you do within the earth plane. The trials and tribulations of everyday life can sometimes block the ability for the soul and for the spiritual side of oneself to be able to come forward. This is something that we teach mediums to do. They must learn to train their minds, to allow the spirit messages to come forward and come through them as the channel of communication. We know that there have been many great mediums who have been able to do this. And today it is important for students on every level of their spiritual journey to understand the nature of consciousness and to realize that it is through the subconscious that the spiritual messages come forward. And as they come forward, you are more enlightened and you are able to understand your journey in greater detail. We know that the rising of the subconscious is important, and sometimes the conscious mind will not remember all of the things that it has done and it has said in the subconscious state. For within each and every one of us, there is a higher self, a higher being that is waiting to just come forward. This is what we teach in spiritualism when we teach inspired speaking. Inspired speaking is the blending of the subconscious higher self with the spirit world. The two work together to bring their message forward. And we teach this to many students. And if you cannot bring in your higher self, the message is not as spiritual. For we know that through the higher self, the wisdom of the ages can be revealed and can be brought to you in many different ways. Of course, the Spirit works with the knowledge of the medium to bring this forward. But it is the higher self, the self that is in touch with the soul, the self that is in touch with the Spirit, that you want to be able to bring through to communicate. And you will find that these messages are very healing, for that is the point of a spiritual journey. One must be moving towards a state of healing, a state of wholeness, a state of bringing forward the subconscious, the unconscious, and the spirit self. For the conscious mind can dominate too much and prevent the spiritual messages from flowing forward into your mind and into the ears of others. So we teach that ability. And how do we teach this? We teach it through the focusing of the mind, the ability to be able to remove the clutter, the everyday thoughts, the things that prevent the spirit from flowing forward. And we do this with deep concentration and with meditation. For it is those quiet moments of meditation that you can begin to fully realize yourself and fully realize your potential and what your higher state has to say. We always ask for the highest and the best, for we only want those spirits to come forward that are in our best interest, and the knowledge to come from a higher place. So we ask for the elevated messages from these levels of spirit world.
Right. So tell me the difference between the soul and the subconscious. I mean, the soul is immaterial, the subconscious is part of one's own personality self. So how do they relate?
The soul is pure spirit. It is energy. It is the life force energy within you. The subconscious is a function of the brain. The brain is a mechanism. It's part of the physical, where the soul is part of the spiritual.
Right. So how do they relate to each other? Because there's a relationship there.
Yes, there's a relationship because the subconscious mind is able to get in touch with the soul more clearly than the conscious mind, because the conscious mind has so many thoughts going on and vibrating in their head that they can't be in touch with the true feelings. It's like being in touch with feelings. You
Mhm.
can look at it this way. We talk about feelings, and many people try to deny their feelings, and they try to deny the instincts and the intuition that they feel because they believe that logic and knowledge is the best way to go. This is not true.
Mhm.
It is through instinct that we touch into the soul, and it is through the subconscious minds that the messages from the soul come forward.
So the subconscious mind really has access to the soul. It's actually the doorway to the soul. And in Jungian terms, it's part of the collective consciousness, would you say?
Yes, but you have to see that Jung's idea of a collective unconsciousness was based on spirit.
Right.
He could not use the spiritualist terminology and ideas because he was not accepted using that language. So, what we really believe as the collective unconscious is really the collective spirit world. So, yes, it is through the subconscious and unconscious mind that we can connect with those spiritual energies, which is also the soul because the soul is spirit.
Okay. Well, this is all great, but we want to talk about ways of awakening the greater consciousness, which will then be an effect on a soul's evolution and the awakening of a greater spiritual connection. This is the purpose of this call, this conversation. So,
Yes, and this medium has devised many, many techniques for doing so, more than I had done within my lifetime, for she applies artistic methods and artistic modes to opening up the subconscious.
so give us for people watching now, can you give us a practical exercise of awakening the greater consciousness, connecting the subconscious, and awakening the soul?
One way that we awaken the subconscious, we'll do it through art first, is you take your hand. If you are right handed, you take your left hand. If you are left handed, you take your right hand. And you do automatic drawing, doodling, or automatic drawing with the opposite hand. So by doing this, you are awakening the side of your mind that is the recessive side, is the side that is not as active. And this is the side where the spirit messages come through. They come through the intuitive, the visual, the thinking, not the thinking side of the mind. So by forcing your other side of the mind to work, you are opening up yourself to the unconscious and to more intuitive ways of thinking. So it's a simple exercise, but mediums do it a lot. They lots of times they doodle or they draw, and if they do it with the opposite hand, they will be able to tune in to that subconscious part of the mind.
Isn't the purpose of incarnational experience, the soul incarnating in the body, to start to live from the soul essence and not the mind, to merge, to awaken? Isn't that the true why we're here?
Why we're here is we're on a spiritual journey, and the journey, yes, is to awaken the parts of the mind that are generally not awake. And there are people who can awaken the mind to the point where they can travel into the spirit world and see the thoughts and ideas that exist there. But this is, of course, practice and training, and it begins with meditation.
Right, I agree. It begins with meditation. But you say we're on a spiritual journey here. That's great, but that means absolutely nothing really, unless you explain the components of the spiritual journey. Can you?
Well, I mean, the spiritualist principles are principles that have tried to point people on the right spiritual path.
And what?
And the
Yeah,
what
what are those principles? Yeah.
the principles are the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the continued existence of the human soul, communication with the spirit and the angels, personal responsibility, the knowledge that you always have redemption. You always, in this life or the next, can atone for the things that you have done. And life is everlasting. It allows you to move from one dimension to the next. So when someone begins to realize that what they do in this life is going to affect their next one, they start to take a little more responsibility in terms of what they are doing on the earth plane. And personal responsibility is very much a part of it. There are many people that blame others for everything that they do, but they can't. They must say, I did this, I must own up to it.
Mhm. Right. You talk about in terms of the father and the brotherhood. What about the aspects of the feminine? I think there's a real movement now to see the divine feminine aspects of life as the nurturer, the giver. Maybe that's new to spiritualist principles, but I think it's what's happening now on planet Earth. What do you
There
think?
has been, God is not male or female. God does not have a gender.
Mhm. Right.
It's the old language that the spiritualists are using, and there have been many debates within the movement as to whether to change the language or not.
Well,
But
I
be,
think you
yeah,
have to change the language because it's out of date to a modern culture. Spiritualism was a manifestation of the late 19th century with certain principles. And as we've evolved 100 or so years later, there's different sets of values that talk to a bigger public. So we need to update spiritualist values. That's my feeling.
some have, some call God infinite intelligence. You can do that. The reason why we use the old language is because that is the way it came through from spirit many, many years ago.
Right.
Emma Hardage Britton brought these words through.
Who
So there
did?
is
Who brought?
debate. Emma Harding Britton
Oh, oh, okay.
brought the words through in a trance state.
Right.
So do we change the words of spirit to fit a modern society or not? That is the question.
Well, the question is, you have to change the words to fit in modern society. What came through Emma was just for the consciousness of that time. Consciousness has evolved, and we are a much more spiritually based society, I feel, at least my community, than the world was 100 or so years ago. So we're in evolution.
This is true. So my preference is to call God infinite intelligence because it is the belief, and it's monism, the belief that there is an infinite intelligence that is behind creation and is behind all of the things that we do and we are. So it is this infinite intelligence that has the bigger plan or the bigger picture of how the world should work.
Uh, yeah, I agree. So let's be practical. You said meditation is one way to drop into the divine intelligence inherent in all. What's another practice you can give people to know their own soul, let's say, to know more aspects of their own soul?
Well, I mean, one must be very honest with oneself and look at the good and the bad within their own behavior and be aware of it. But I will give you another meditation exercise. Some
Yes.
people cannot meditate in quiet, some people cannot meditate with music. But if you're beginning, the music helps. And here is the exercise: put on a piece of instrumental music. It cannot have words because the words will jar you out of your reverie or your altered state. Put on some light instrumental music and try to float with the music. Now, thoughts will come into your mind, and when they do, you just push them away and try to float on a level with the music so that the
No.
whole body becomes relaxed.
Mhm.
Yes?
Yes, sorry, just a little interruption. Yes, the whole body. Yes, I'm with you. Yes.
So that the whole body becomes relaxed and it almost feels like it's floating in water. It's like one of those tanks you now have where people float in water and they get rid of all the sounds around them.
Meditation isolation tank. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. We didn't have those in my day.
I know they were invented in 19, I think, 58.
So, no, we had to depend purely on our minds and purely on the fact that we could control the mind and bring the mind into an altered state.
Right. So tell me about yourself, Gordon. You're a disincarnate being, and what do you do all day long?
I help people with the communication between this world and yours.
Mhm. What's that world like? What is this, when you say this world, what is your world like?
The world is very much like your own. It is very much based on thoughts and ideas, and many of those thoughts and ideas are based on the reality that you lived in on the earth plane, except that the flowers and the colors are very different. So things that you have never seen and maybe have imagined exist in my world.
Right. But what is the mechanism? So you're in that world, we're in this world. What is the mechanism of this interface? Do you get like a signal to like answer a psychic phone in order to be work with the medium? How does that work?
It's funny you mentioned the phone. There have been many people since the beginning of your telephone technology and the beginning of your telegraph technology that have used these metaphors to describe communication with the spirit world. What happens is the medium works on this plane, on your plane, to be able to communicate with the spirit by clearing their mind and allowing the subconscious mind to speak the words from the other side. On our side, the spirits must be trained to be able to communicate to the individual medium or to the person they want to communicate with. There are many spirits here that want to communicate with their loved ones on the other side. Sometimes this occurs through physical types of things, like seeing objects or seeing butterflies or seeing birds or hearing noises, those raps that sometimes come from nowhere, could be your loved ones trying to communicate with you.
Right. So tell me though, you say though, that life there is just like life here, then what do you do all day long? Just curious.
Well, we have jobs and we work.
What kind of
We
jobs and working? I thought that doesn't sound like such a,
Well,
yeah.
there's several things. I mean, those who are philosophers are continuing to learn philosophy on the spirit side of life, and they become your wise people that present information to the earth plane. There are people who help those that have just died and are coming over, help them with the passing process. There are many people who come over to this side of life who need healing and helping because they have had a difficult time in the physical plane. So we help them and have helped to heal them. We try to teach the spirits on our side to communicate with their loved ones in the physical plane. These are all different exercises and things that we do in the spirit world, which would make no sense in yours.
No, I appreciate that. One question I have, and they might have some more questions online here, is I have my understanding of what the difference between soul and spirit is. What's your way of distinguishing between the two?
The soul is the spiritual essence that resides within the body.
Right. The soul is within the body, and the spirit
Correct.
is eternal around.
Spirit is around and about and everywhere around us. It is all a vibration, but the vibration of the soul is contained within the human body. So, this is what passes into the next world when we move on or when we transfer or
So
pass away.
the soul is what incarnates lifetime after lifetime.
Correct.
And the spirit is not the incarnational mechanism. The spirit is the, what's the relationship between the spirit and the soul then?
The soul is part spirit.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at spirit as a vibration, it is a vibrational thing. It is a vibration that surrounds you and is all about you. It is a vibration that is based on your thoughts and ideas. The soul is a piece of that spirit that resides within the body, so it is housed within the body. When it leaves the body, you are deceased.
Right. But then it incarnates again.
It can,
Right.
not everyone incarnates.
Right. But right now, this identity you calling Gordon there is the soul of of a being. It's an
Gordon,
aspect of that. Yeah.
Gordon the is the soul, is the spiritual aspect of his last incarnation. Gordon has lived many other lives as well, as most spiritual beings have. And so this was just his last incarnation.
Right.
But yes, it's the spiritual essence. When people say that they move on to the spirit world, it is the soul that moves on. But attached to the soul are all of the things that you have done in the physical world.
Right. All the experiences and all the
Correct.
emotions. So
Correct.
the goal of incarnation, the spirit taking form in the body, what's the reason for that then?
It's a refining process. We are trying to refine the essence of an individual's soul so that they can reach more spiritual heights, that they can find love in their heart, because love is what really brings it all together in a spiritual way. If someone is filled with hatred, their soul is not as refined as someone who is filled with love. Those who are filled with love reach higher and higher. And of course, the goal is to become such a high level that one does not reincarnate again.
But why do they need to incarnate to learn those lessons if the lessons that you're learning up there are similar to the ones we're learning here? That part doesn't make sense.
Well, you take a person, all right, let's take a person. You take a person who has cheated and who has lied and who has lived a miserable life. When they get to the other side, their life will also be kind of miserable. It will not be on the high level. They will not be in the green fields and see the beautiful flowers and the colors. They will be more in a gray mist. So they are going to incarnate again to try to make themselves a better person, so that when they pass the next time, they raise themselves up into a higher level in the
So how do
spiritual
they make
world.
themselves a better person? So they
But
incarnate again with that same soul memory, and then what's
know that they don't have the soul memory. I mean, the memory is in the soul, but the memory is not in the mind.
right? So okay, they incarnate again, and
Right.
how do they know to seek a better relationship with the world than they had before?
That is up to their own free will.
Yeah, but how do they know? How do they know to do it? They must have some residue of a soul's, let's call it soul sense, where if they keep doing that same action, they'll end up in the same level. There must be an evolution of the soul lifetime after lifetime.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, a person can be just as miserable from one lifetime to another. It doesn't mean they're going to progress.
Well, there is, what's the purpose of incarnation if not progression of the soul's evolution?
Well, that's the goal, but it's not saying that everyone is striving for that goal. I
Right.
mean, I would say this to you. I would say that a person comes back into the life force as a baby, depending upon the conditions in which they grow up and whether or not they listen to the intuitive voice within their soul that will help to lead and direct them. I mean, for example, if you have someone who is born into a lifetime of child abuse, they will have some severe emotional issues and problems that they must deal with. If they deal with it in their lifetime, then they will have a chance of progressing. But if they repeat the pattern of being abusive to someone else, they won't. So part of it is the family you're born into, and part of it is your own soul trying to give you some instruction through the intuitive side of the individual.
Right, right. No, I get that. So you're not really telling me anything from spirit that Sue couldn't say herself. So I mean, is there anything you could say from the perspective you're in that probably Sue and most people wouldn't know? Because what you're sharing is very not common wisdom, but it's basic spiritual teaching. I want to understand the perspective of the other side. Do you know what I mean?
On the other side.
Yeah, what perspective is different over there than it is here? What are they seeing
Well,
there?
you're not. On the other side, you can see the spiritual flows in and out and all around you, and you can feel the vibrations of others, and they can pass through you in ways that they cannot in the physical body. And as you blend with others in the spirit world, you can understand and merge with their intelligences in different ways than you can on the earth plane. And it's almost like floating, like floating. We float in and out and we look for souls that we can help. Most people on the earth plane don't go around looking for souls that they can help. We try to grow and we try to get people to understand that spirit is the vibration, and it is a vibration. It's a vibration that is a vibration with light. The
Mm,
more you can handle the bright light, the higher you will achieve. Higher levels of consciousness and states of consciousness. And these levels are levels that you on a human plane cannot understand. There is consciousness that is pure consciousness, where one is just a thinking being and does not have to be a physical form. And these minds are minds that are trying to direct and move people in different ways. What you don't understand is that we up here are watching you and are guiding you in many different ways that you do not realize
mhm.
and you do not know. You will only feel it at times when you feel the intuition. But we are trying to guide you, and this is a time where you need a tremendous amount of guidance. So listen to those who are not the most well known, but listen to those who are giving you inspiration and wisdom that is coming from the bottom up. We are a consciousness. We are a different consciousness, and our consciousness is tapped into your consciousness through your soul. So it is through the intuitiveness and through the blending of your soul with ours that we can provide you with insight and guidance. So the more people that are able to connect with the spirit world, the more guidance they will receive from us. For we can see the errors of your ways and we can help guide you into a new path and a new light.
Well, here we are at a situation. What guidance do you have for people listening now about this transformational time we're in?
You can see, we very much believe in whole of humanity. You are all together. You are all together guiding each other on this planet of Earth. It is not separate. You must be able to work with each other, to know each other. And we see many cases now where people, although you talk about separation, are really coming together in new and unique ways. It starts with communication on your earth plane. And those who have the communication from the spirit world need to be able to communicate that information to others. For not everyone is open and ready to understand. So it is opening the mind, opening the self, thinking in different ways. Don't stay put within your rut. Begin to explore and look at things in new and unique dimensions, because it is a dimensionality as well. There is a world that is more peaceful than yours, and you can achieve it and find it if you listen to guidance.
Right. I agree with that. That's a little more, that's a little deeper. Someone asks here, is Gordon in heaven? From Charlene. Thanks, Charlene. Would you say that's
Well,
heaven? Yeah.
there is only heaven, there is no hell.
Okay. So you aren't, are you, would you call this heaven?
For
The
me, yes, because I am on a higher sphere. There are a number of spheres and planes within the spirit realm. And people who have been very neglectful of their souls arrive in a place that's very dark. It's a darkness. It's a darkness that they cannot escape, and many times they do not know where they are. Where I am, it is light, it is bright, it is beautiful. We have houses and gardens, and we live in a wonderful environment.
when you
For
say house,
those,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. No, go
for
ahead.
those who are not on a spiritual path, they end up in darkness alone.
Right. But you say houses and gardens as if it's physical. Um,
It looks physical to us because
but
it
I,
is all
but,
thought.
but you're not physical, right?
No, It
Uh,
is all thought. It is all based on thought. The things you think become actualities. So
so
if you think,
yeah,
if you're a good person and you can think about that country garden home that you always wanted to live in, you can have it on the other side.
right. Just like in a way, this is all thought as well. This dimension is really all thought.
Correct. But with your thoughts, you build it on a physical plane. So it's much more difficult to create. On our world, it's all based on thought and vibrations. So it's based on the individual's vibration to create it.
Right. One more question someone asks is what's the process of the soul incarnating into a pregnancy when a woman is pregnant? How does that happen? What's the science of that?
The science is usually love.
No, but how does the soul come into the body?
As an energy form, as an energy, as a spark, like a spark of electricity. So it's like when the baby is conceived, it receives a spark of like electrical current that grows within the child as it matures.
But but what is the like how does the soul know I'm going to choose that body? I mean, what's the whole connection between the souls and the incarnational experience? That's what I'm asking.
Well, the spirit world orchestrates much of this, and many of you have the belief that people choose their parents. I
Yes, I
do
have that
believe,
belief.
yes, I believe that the spirit energies are attract different individual souls on the spirit side are attracted to different individuals on the earth plane. And through that spark of vibration, whichever way you want to say, because it really is a vibration, through that vibration, in while the baby is in the mother's womb, spirit is able to um, place that spark of life within them.
But there's a relationship between the soul and the mother and father who are incarnating, because I do think you choose your parents for certain reasons.
That is correct. And you would choose your parents to try to be able to fulfill your soul's destiny.
And what is the soul's destiny?
Ah, that depends. Everyone's is different. Everyone has their own place in the world and their own reason for being part of the whole. For each little piece is like an atom or a molecule that is part of the whole of the world. And though we don't think of us people as molecules, it is through the coming together of each individual that we create the world and we create what happens in it.
Right. Well, okay, let me see. Is there's one more question? Free will only exists at the ultimate state and sense of freedom. Talk about the idea of free will and the ultimate state in human form, how to merge with that ultimate state.
Okay, I think I understand the question.
Yeah, talk about basically free will and
We have free will. Okay, we have free will to decide what is happening. This is why we cannot predict the future, because we can only say that the future is based on where the person is at that moment in time. But the free will allows them to change their path at any point. And if they change their path, then their future changes. So this goes along with the journey of the soul. For if the soul is ignorant and is selfish and does not help others, um, I think of the story of the Christmas Carol. They, you can see that Scrooge had to change. Before Scrooge changed, He was on a path where his soul would not be on a very high level. After he had the realization of how the things he had done were affecting other people, and he began to change, his free will enabled him to move more towards a spiritual path. And that's what the free will allows us to do. And if you're thinking about how do I get my free will to do this? Well, part of it is the stubbornness of the mind and of the person. For we see that in each individual there is a spiritual component which comes through in intuition. You need to know what feels right and what feels wrong. And if during your life you follow the things that feel wrong, you are not on your spiritual path
Why would anyone follow something that feels wrong?
because they do not feel.
Well, then they're not feeling it's wrong, then they're just not feeling.
Correct.
Well, that has to do with sensitivity then and tuning in.
Correct.
So it's
Correct.
not like
But
they're
not
doing.
every mind tunes in. Not every mind is aware of the different elements and the different levels of consciousness that they can enter upon.
Mhm,
So if the mind is totally blocked
mhm.
with physical things, they are not on a spiritual journey.
Well, they are, they just don't know it. That's the problem. We're
That is
all.
correct. Yes.
One last question, because I know we should go soon, although it's probably timeless. Where you're at is now in this moment, in this crisis, in this transformation, we have more access to the higher dimensions. So the shift is happening, and I feel like the we're letting go of this astral disincarnate plane because we're reaching towards a higher realm. Can you talk about that?
There are seven spheres in which people can progress. But what you're talking about is beyond the seven. Beyond the seven, there are additional spheres in which life forms are different from our own. So once we move out of the human life spheres, we move into a different higher state of consciousness
Can you
where
talk about that? Those
our,
higher states?
where our consciousness just is pure consciousness. We no longer need to worry about the earth plane and the people on the earth plane. We merge with the stars, we merge with the universe so that we can give our energy back to the whole. For you know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So, where does it go? It can go out beyond the seven spheres into another realm. And there are beings in that realm that you can communicate with if you are train your mind to do so. There are many people that are channelers that are bringing through information from different spheres and different levels beyond the earth plane. But again, you need to have an open mind. You need to be able to go past the human
But
dimension.
isn't that where you want to go? Because isn't that your aspiration?
Eventually,
What,
yes. But
what are you waiting for, Gordon?
no, because one must give service. One must be of help to others before one can pass into that realm.
I see. So you're not ready to go to that realm because you have not given enough service, you're saying.
That's correct. And some of us voluntarily give service because we know that service is the best way for our souls to progress into a spiritual world, a
Just talk.
higher level.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you mentioning these higher realms. To talk about the geometric formations and the grids of these seven levels of existence and the kind of new grid that's now coming in that's creating new geometric forms.
If you can, and I want to do a thing, if you can think of the earth plane grid as a round grid with all of the energy in the seven spheres in a circular motion, but then if you think of the higher realms as a flatter grid but it's not just a flat grid. It is a grid that goes across, and it is a grid that goes up and down. So it is a grid that moves in time. And so it is
Hyperdimension. It's a
hyper,
hyperdimensional.
it's a
Yeah.
hyperdimensional grid, but it's more rectangular, where your Earth is circular. The place where all of the past lives and bodies live in a more multidimensional um, place.
But that's changing now. Just talk a little bit about how there's a shift in the hyperdimensional grid works to uplift the soul connection to the other dimensional realms, the fifth dimension and so on.
Well, the grid must come in and collect information from the sphere and then move it out so that there is another sphere that is almost like the aura of a person. So that on the seventh level, there is an aura around the seventh level, and it is in that aura that you communicate with spirit, and it is in that grid that you communicate with higher dimensions and realms.
Right. I just one question from our friend Steve, the unveiled space force, the North Star is our guiding light. Do you have anything to say about that? The North Star is our guiding light to a dimensional doorway.
There are many different dimensional doorways because you see that time and space are not what you conceive them to be. They're man-made, man-made ideas. So time and space exist completely differently. In my world, there is no time. There is no time.
Right. But there is things you do within time space, right? So
We don't perceive it as time. There are things we do, period.
and then you don't that part I don't understand. You don't perceive it as time. What there's a sequence of events. Is it not timed, those sequences?
In your conception, it's time, but in my conception, it's not. I
What
mean,
is it in your conception?
right now, I can speaking through this medium, but I can also be helping someone to come pass into the other world.
But do you remember the beginning of this conversation? That was a few minutes ago. Is that
No,
time? You do not. You're just, so you
no,
don't, there's no memory of that. It's just presence. Is that what you're saying?
exactly. It's in the eternal now. It is just this moment.
I get that. Well,
And
Gordon,
so that is another way. That is another way for you to be able to change your consciousness, is to
but being,
be in the internal moment and the internal now, and to not be in, I did this or I need to do this, but just really focus on the moment that you're in.
and I think we'll be happier. And I think more things will awaken for us. Um, thank you. Any final words? Because your lighting just dimmed in your room, but any final words before you?
Um, I just say God bless you and keep you, and remember to meditate and to be conscious of your spiritual journey.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. If there is time, thank you for your presence.
Oh
And
dear.
I know
Yeah, I
the light went out in your room there, Sue, but it didn't affect the voice. But do you want,
yes, the light went out because it's about to have a thunderstorm.
oh, well, is there a light you can put on or anything you
Um,
want to say about what, well, we can just wrap up, I guess, soon. If you don't see a light in your room, do you see a light there?
yeah, here, wait 1 second.
Okay, sure. I've been talking to Sue Barnes. She actually teaches mediumship and she's also an artist. So she also paints as a kind of, that's kind of a nice mediumship looking light there.
Yes, that's perfect, because the other thing is that when you meditate, it is, you can do it anytime, anywhere, but it's helpful to do it in a dimmed light, not bright light.
Anyway, do you have any comments on what you shared today? And what did that get to? I think
Well, did I answer your questions?
we went a little deeper actually. Yeah, when he when you stopped relating to this earth plane and told more about the dimensions of the higher realms, that was more in line with what I was looking for. So thank you.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Of course, I don't remember. So I can't comment.
But a lot of what was saying is something you could have said in your normal state of consciousness. You know, I think you should try just channeling yourself.
No, it's not. It's that's what we call inspired speaking. So no, I couldn't just come out with it exactly the same way when I'm awake.
You could, I bet, if you practice it. I mean, I bet
Well,
you.
uh, yes, when I do the inspired speaking, I don't close my eyes. No, so
What is, how do you define inspired speaking? What is that?
well, basically, here how I do inspired speaking is that I will think of it. I'll pick a topic. Usually, when I do it in the churches, it's one of the principles. So I'll pick a topic and then I'll think about it for a week, and um, maybe I can write a couple of notes. But then when I get up to speak, I have no notes. I just speak.
Well, I think that's sort of normal. I mean, inspired speaking.
No, no. I mean, how many people can get up for 20 minutes and give a talk without preparing anything?
Well, there are people that can do
There
that.
are people that can do it because they've trained themselves to do it. You know, it's extemporaneous speaking. But what you're bringing through is more spiritual, higher spiritual kinds of ideas. It's
But
you're not
you
talking about yourself.
you already know all these spiritual, like you already have you already have trained yourself over the years to bring in spiritual ideas, right?
Yes, part of it's my mind, but part of it's inspiration from the spirit world. It comes together in a way that I, in my thinking mind, would not do it.
I don't know. I think someplace we have to take responsibility, not in an ego way, but for the access of spirit into the human mind so we can start getting out of the old ways of thinking and incorporate spirit as an everyday presence. So this is what I want to do, change the old understanding of the spiritualist, update it.
Well, yes, I mean, but part of that too is the fact that I hear spirit, or I can communicate with spirit all the time. I don't need to just go into a trance state. I hear spiritual messages continually. I mean, not all day long. It's not like they're talking to me all day long, but there are times when I just get insights and ideas that I know are coming from spirit.
But they're coming from you, Sue. I mean, this is just my.
That's what the psychiatrist would say.
No, I'm not saying it's coming from your psychological mind. I'm saying it's coming from you as spirit. It's coming from spirit, but your spirit. I'm not talking psychology. I'm talking about a spiritual dimension in which we all exist on, where it's coming and we're starting to merge together.
That's correct. But what I'm saying is that when I receive these messages, it feels like it's coming from outside.
Yeah, it's coming from our spirit, but
Yes, it's coming from the whole spiritual vibration, and it's coming in and tapping in with mine. And
but
it's
there is
communicating.
not yours. That is you. This is just my opinion. When you say it's tapping in with mine, it is you that's incarnating into form. So there is no mind and spirit. It's a union of the true essence of who you are speaking through the personality self. That's what I say. So I'm just saying, you could take responsibility without giving it away to spirit for
No,
your creativity.
but I do, okay, maybe this is a different in belief systems, but I do believe there is a spirit world.
Yes, and we're all in it, whether we know it or not.
We are in it. I agree with you. We are in it. But in order to be able to communicate with it, we need to develop our minds so that we are open enough to hear it.
All right, I don't mean to grill you, as one commenter said. Sorry.
No, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think we're moving into a new time where this is just my belief, where there's
We are moving into a new time where our minds will be able to understand these different levels of consciousness more clearly. And we will be able to enter into these levels of consciousness. For example, everybody's talking about the UFOs, and now they're saying from the government that they're finding some, they're admitting to seeing some.
Right.
In order to communicate with different life forms, we have to do it on the same level as mediumship.
I don't
So,
know if I agree with that. I mean, why do you say that? Why do you say that?
well, I mean, that's how they communicate with people. Look at all the people who are channelers.
Right. But is there a way of reaching them as we evolve into this next fifth dimension?
Wait, wait.
Okay.
You're okay. You want to talk about the evolution.
Yeah.
Okay. The evolution is that everybody will become like a medium. That's
Yes.
the
What I'm
evolution.
saying. That's sort of where I'm going with this discussion.
Yes, that's so everyone will be able to do this. It's not just a few select people that call themselves mediums or psychics. Is that everyone will have the ability to be able to communicate with the spirit world
With
and with
their
the
own
UFO
spirit.
world.
I
What?
no, but I think there'll be, I wouldn't call it the spirit world. I would say the spirit that we all are will start to be embodied in a much more solid way. That's my feeling in this evolution. Do you agree with that, possibly?
Yes, but again, you have to realize it's a vibration.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a vibrational thing. And so when the body can accept the other vibrations, it's like, there's some sounds that young people can hear that older people can't.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's like that. I mean, it's like there are vibrations all around us that are all part of our world and we are part of it, but we can't hear it or we can't see it. So,
Right.
I mean, it's the ability to hear this, hear clairaudiently, the spirit world, and see clairvoyantly. I mean, there are people who can see the other side of life and what it looks like. And there are people, I mean, I have seen things clairvoyantly. When people see ghosts and things, they're doing it clairvoyantly. I don't do it all the time, but I can do it. Most people can't. And
Right.
so it is a changing of the mind so that we can be able to see these other dimensions and hear the other dimensions as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sue. And I appreciate you showing an example and willing you're in a vulnerable state. I know when you go into those other realms. So I do appreciate you, letting go and opening yourself up and bringing through an aspect of these higher consciousnesses. So thank you, Sue.
Oh, you're very welcome, Alan.
Um, how can people find you? You also teach classes on mediumship and medium art as well. So tell people.
Yes, I have it all listed on my website, which is www.spiritartgallery.net.
Let me put that in the chat.
Spiritartgallery.net, all one word. Um, Yeah, and I put the classes up there when I would teach them, and I put my personal information is up there as well.
Gallery, GALL
ERY
ALLERY.net.
.net, yes.
And you give classes. I'm putting that in the chat. You give classes on art and mediumship, and
Yes,
and you give readings too, right?
I do readings as well. Yes, yes.
Great. Well, thanks for spending, the last couple of weeks here on Friday with us. We'll see where this goes. And I appreciate you putting yourself out there because it is quite a vulnerable state. Don't you think so?
Yes, yes. Fortunately, nothing noisy happened, and the dog didn't.
Well,
Fortunately, my dog goes to sleep when I do it.
oh, really? Wait, I just,
The dog is really amazing. When I sit in my cabinet, because I have several cabinets, well, I have a cabinet in Lilydale where I do the real seance work. And oh, seance work, yes, the book to
Oh,
show
what
the
is
book.
that book? What is
This
it
is
about?
called Unfolding Physical Mediumship. It talks about physical mediumship, spiritualism, and trance, and it explains it all.
You wrote that book?
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
how long have you been studying this mediumship?
Oh, about 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and I've studied at the Arthur Findlay College, and I do have British credentials.
How do people order the book?
Amazon, you can get it right on Amazon.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Sue, for your time. And
And thank you, Alan.
okay, we will be in touch. I've been talking to Sue Barnes, medium. You're not a channel though, you're a medium, right?
Yeah, I'm a medium.
I what and the difference between that is what?
I, I keep reading differences. I mean, basically, the difference is that most people who channel one entity, where I channel deceased, and it's not necessarily a deceased person. I tend to tapping into deceased personalities in the spirit world, and I tap into many of them. I mean, I've even tapped into relatives for some people when we've done seances, fathers and mothers and things like that.
But do you ever
So,
tap into ascended masters? Because that's really more channeling when they tap into the beings beyond this.
well, I mean, they don't identify themselves as ascended masters. I mean, they do identify themselves as spirit guides, and so I don't think these guides incarnate at this point anymore. Because the spirit guides, you have a guide that exists with you throughout your entire lifetime. Um, and they come with you when you're born and they stay through your life. And when you pass, they're there at your passing. So that's how I know when people are passing. I see their spirit guide next to them along with a loved one.
Hmm. But you never tap into the ascended masters, huh?
I don't know. I mean, again,
Mm,
titles. What does that title mean?
right, right.
I mean, there are people that assign names to quote unquote ascended masters, and there are people that assign names to different angels and things. Have I tapped in with an angel? Yes. Have I tapped into ascended masters? Yes. Do I channel them? No. Um, I channel deceased people, deceased loved ones.
Okay, whatever you want. Anyway, someone says love is the substance of the universe. So, I mean, it's all about
That's
love.
correct. It's all about love. And it's all about if you're trying to get onto a better spiritual path, it's all about love and caring for other people.
One more question. Yeah. Is your book on Audible? Someone asked. Is your book
I don't know. I don't think it's on Audible at the time. At this time, it is on Kindle.
because great. All right, Sue, thanks again for your time. I'm with Sue Barnes. Spiritartgallery.net is her website. You could find me at newrealities.com or youtube.com/newrealities. And about 45 minutes, I'm doing another stream with Niles Gerard. It's a healing salon. If you want to come into the Zoom room on that one, the Zoom numbers in the chat, in the live chat. So thank you all for tuning in today, and we'll see you where we continue with this series. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alan. Take care.
Thank you.
Blessings.